When you first start emery, you start with the roughest, which is 150. It's the grittiest. Then we move on to less rough. We go to 280, and then we get progressively finer to 400, then to 1200. Then the very last thing that we do is steel wool. Steel wool, when it's brand new, looks like this, and when it's completely used up, it's like this. Don't use it. The medium-sized piece is still usable. Then you guys are going to fold paper towel back and forth. Doesn't really matter how you do it. I like to accordion pleat it, so I go back and forth. And what you're trying to do is just make pages, because every side of your project, every side, the back and the front, for each grit is going to use a separate page. So you want to be able to have separate pages like this. And it provides a surface for you to set your project on so it doesn't get scratched up by the table.
After you've got everything folded so that you have different pages, you're going to go through the sequence of emery paper. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make it so that it becomes mirror shiny, and that's all the way to the end of your whole entire emery sequence. But for the first part, you're going to be doing 150. 150 is the grittiest, it's the roughest, it's what we always start with. Main thing is you're going to put this on the paper towel so that it doesn't get scratched by the surface of the table. And the most important thing is that you're going to be going in one direction. You can hold this any way that you want. You can fold it, you can bend it, use your thumb, you can use your forefingers, whichever, but hold it in place, and then you're really just digging right into this surface here. And what you're trying to do is remove all of the copper scale. The copper scale is the pink copper substance that deposits itself after it comes out of the pickle. Brass does this, and so what you're trying to do is you're trying to get all of that off of there. And only the 150 is going to do that. So the 150 is going to take longer than all the other emery papers. So you spend time going in one direction. If you were to reverse the direction and dig into a little part that maybe you couldn't get to if you were going back and forth, if you really needed to dig into a part, what will happen is you're going to change the sheen. So you can kind of see right in here how if I bounce some light off of it, it kind of interrupts the grain here and it's not as shiny. And so if you were to go in all different directions with your emery paper, what is going to happen is you're not going to get mirror shiny. You're going to get a very scratchy looking surface. On some things that may look really good, but on this project it's not going to work. So what you have to do though in order to achieve the mirror finish is then to go back and straighten out that grain. And so you would just take fresh grit, you would take the part that's grittiest, you've already worn out some of this part right here, and then you straighten out this grain. And you just straighten out more and more. And if you need to change direction so that you can really dig into it, that's what you can do. But you spend a lot of time. It may take 2 class periods, so between, I would say, 40 minutes to sometimes maybe an hour, maybe even more, depending on how much pressure you put on. So we're going to be doing this, and this is the reason why we use the paper towel. Look at all this. This is not only the metal coming off, but it's also the grit that's getting spent here. And you're going to be trying to rotate this so that you're using all of the fresh grit that you can. And as you're doing this, you're going to be wearing out this piece of paper, and it's going to start getting more worn looking, it's going to get more dull, and it's going to get more like it's feeling like velvet, more smooth and less gritty. So you'll go through this whole entire thing, you go the whole entire front side, get the complete front side all completely done, and then I would probably check for my approval because there's always a little bit of copper scale that people miss when they do this. And so I can always go back and I can point those things out. And then you can go back and you can fix all those things. Because again, if you move on to the 280 is not going to be removing the copper scale. Only the 150 is going to be doing that. So I want to make sure that you get that all taken care of before you move on to the 280. So when you get this front side done, then you're going to turn the page and then get a fresh surface to emery against, and then you're going to go and do the backside. Once you've gotten the whole entire backside done, and you will rip up this paper towel. Don't worry, this paper towel is going to get completely used up. That's just what happens, just because this is sandpaper and this is rough, so it will rip up your surface. If you need to go get more paper towel, that's totally fine. But then you're going to start doing the outside edges, and the way I usually tell people to do this is to fold it, fold the paper like this, and go all around like this, and just go side by side. But you can also go along the edge. You can go along the edge like this, so that you're following the contour. So you're going parallel to the edge. So just to show you, you're going this way. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to really smooth out these edges. You're taking away all the file marks now. So it's going to really be smooth all the way around. So you can kind of go back and forth, or you can go side by side. It just depends on how you can get to it. But you are going to be trying to rotate this emery paper and trying to get fresh grit this whole time. I would recommend when you start doing the pierce parts, which if you can get to it, that's what you're trying to remove. You're trying to get all of the copper scale off of the pierce parts as well. You can fold into a point and turn it into sort of a tool, and then start going inside and doing all of the pierce parts like this, because you do want to remove all the copper scale from the edges of the pierce parts as well. And so you're going to be doing this for a little while, and after, I don't know, it doesn't take very long, maybe a minute, couple minutes, before the part that you're using is going to get worn down. It's going to get very worn down. It's going to get really smooth, and so it's going to be ineffective. So then you unfold and then go over to fresh part of your grit and form that into another tool. And then you can start doing other parts and getting all the inside here. So this is detail work. This is really, you're putting some love into this, because you're trying to get it so that it's really, really nice. And all of the time that you spent filing is not going to be wasted, because you are going through and you're making it all nice and smooth. So you'll get all of the front side, turn the page, all of the back side. Then you pick it up, and then you start doing the outside edges and the pierced parts by using a tool. You're going to probably go through a couple of pieces of 150. So when you start to see that it's just not effective, or it's starting to feel really more smooth and gritty, then you just grab another fresh piece. And that's what you're going to be doing. When you've got all of this all done with 150, bring it up to me, I'll take a look at it, and then I'll tell you where you may need to do some touch-ups, and then I'll tell you to move on. So when I say to move on, here is a good thing to do. You're going to be turning your page over to another fresh part. And when you move on to the 280, you're not looking to remove the copper scale anymore. Now you're just going to be trying to refine this grit, this grain that you've just made. So you've got all of these kind of lines that the grit made that go all the way in a horizontal direction. And so now what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're hitting all of the parts. So I recommend that you do a section at a time. So you're going to be taking it and kind of spend one unit of time going back and forth here. So we're following that same direction. Maybe spend 10 seconds. And that means counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Go all the way up to 10. Then move on to the next section. Go in that same direction. Maybe rotate your grid a little bit so that you've got another part of your piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you do that all the way down, and then turn your page. When you got the front side done, do the back side. Do the same thing. Here's a little section, 10 seconds. Another 10-second session. Okay, so this is just with the 280. Then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go through all of the grit with all the outside edges. You're going to go all the outside edges, and then the pierced parts. Turn it into a tool. Go in there, get all the pierced parts. Same thing. Just really get in there and work the emery paper all around. So you're trying to get all of your outside edges and pierced parts all finished as well. So then when you are done with the 280, that's when you move on to the 400. Do the same thing. Turn the page. Front side. 10 seconds. 10 seconds. 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Turn it over when you get that side done. Do another page, another fresh page. Okay, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. Then twist it, fold it, however you need to get the outside edges and pierce parts. And then you do the same thing with 1200. Now when you get to steel wool, the steel wool is kind of nasty and messy. This is a fresh piece of steel wool and it looks good. This one is, you can sort of start to see, you can see where it's kind of wrapped around itself like this, where it's kind of wrapped around. If you can still see that spiral, it's still usable. But if it's a little gnarly piece like this, you want to toss it. Don't try and use it because it will actually scratch your work. So here, when you're using the steel wool is going to make a mess. You're going to go through and you're going to go just like this. Don't worry about pierced parts. This is where it's going to become mirror shiny. And you go back and forth. But now it's going to be making, you're going to do this a little bit longer, but it's going to make a huge mess here. But then what you're going to do is when you've got the front side and the back side done, now your fingers are going to be all blackened and you're going to have a mess here. So what I want you to do is then you're going to go and wash this off and you're going to turn this in. So the best thing to do is to go over to the sink and to take a little soap in your hand, hold this in another hand, wash off your fingers, get a little soap, and while you're holding it, wash off your fingers. Then you take a little bit more soap, put it on your project like this, and then rinse it off. And then you're going to take your paper towel to dry it. And when you take your paper towel to dry it, this is the last time. When you sandwich it like this to dry your project, this is the last time you're going to be touching it. So from here, this is where you blot it completely dry. And now you're going to take it, and then this is where you don't touch it at all, because now it's going to be completely dry. If you need another paper towel, great, but just don't put any fingerprints on this. That'll become tarnish. Now this one's, of course, it's not done, but when it is done, you'll drop it into the baggie. Do not put your mouth anywhere near here to either suck the air out or to blow into the bag. Just don't do that. Just squeeze the air out like this, and then you're ready to turn it in.